Today, I am delighted to speak with Dan Dore. Dan Dore is a successful real estate investor with over 2 decades of investing experience. He is the founder of Dore Property Management, whose mission is to match the right tenants with the appropriate units while providing outstanding responsiveness to day-to-day challenges that in turn offers headache-free ownership. He's also founder of the Dore Capital Group. He's a public speaker, soon-to-be author, as well as a philanthropist. He and his team are on a mission to serve 10 times the amount of people with their property management services, their real estate holdings, as well as their philanthropic efforts. And in this episode, we'll be speaking to Dan about property development.
Welcome back. I'm excited again to have Dan Dore of Dore Property Management with us today on this second part of the two-part interview that we had. Originally, he came in to talk to us about his property management company. Today, we're going to talk about his capital group, the Dore Capital Group. And that has to do with a little bit more about wealth building, development, and okay, this word has always been difficult for me, so somebody help me here.
Philanthropy, yeah.
I'm going to try this. Philanthropy. I know it's a beautiful thing. I know it's a generous thing, etc. But it's always been a hard word for me to say. I'm excited and delighted that you were able to do this two-part with me. I love what you shared about the property management component about the company, and I love how things have started to evolve based on the sharing that you've shared with me already. It's seems to be such a natural thing when you're talking about property management. It's been my experience as a property management in the past in the Caribbean. And so when I'm in a room with somebody who is experiencing or has had similar experiences, it's just like, oh my goodness, somebody that talks the language. So tell me, Dan, please tell me, how did you get into it? How did property development come about for you?
Yeah, it's something that I've been recommended by people around me for quite some time. And even at some point, this is funny because this was a triggering point in this whole mindset. Is like, my brother's a doctor, so all his doctor friends, obviously it's different level depending on who you talk to when they talk about real estate and investing and so on. You have somebody who does it on a smaller level, some do it on a much bigger level. And one day, I go to meet this doctor where literally all of us are busy. So I'm like 6 o'clock on a Saturday morning, meeting him in his basement office because he wants to invest in real estate, but he doesn't want to buy real estate and just give it to us as a fee service and so on. So he actually tells me, says, Dan, he says, I'd love to buy more real estate, but I'd like you to be in on the deal with me, right? And at that point, I'm like, well, I don't do that. All my rental properties it's just me. And that way, in my mind, I get to control everything. I don't have to ask any questions. And I know sometimes you have to ask questions when you're involved in real estate. So I actually tell him, I said, while I prefer you buy your real estate, we'll manage it at a fee like we do for everybody else. He says to me, yeah, I understand you do that. And I understand the value. But he says, I'm a doctor. Like I don't want or know or care to know everything that's happening. All the decisions need to be made. And he says, I understand if I hire you, and I'm sure you're very good and everybody, your team and all that. But when you own something, you always have that little extra vested interest in taking care of it.
This is a very clever man.
So he says, for me, I would much rather have you own part of it with me. So then I know that whatever decision you made must have been the right one because you're going to benefit out of it as well. And it's interesting because I kind of left there and wasn't really ready to hear that conversation. Like, that's not where I thought the conversation was going to go. And it just got me thinking, because then all of a sudden I started talking about this to other people. And obviously it makes a tremendous amount of sense. And I'm talking several years ago. So I really started asking questions and say, well, what's preventing me from doing this? Like, why? Obviously I've got the knowledge, and obviously there's always that limiting beliefs or the fear factor that, well, I don't know if I want to do this with other people. But then you realize that there's people out there with money that will never get involved. And this relates to our talk about property management at the beginning, at the other session, where I say a lot of people wouldn't get involved because they don't want to deal with it. Well, a lot of people wouldn't get involved. They don't have a guy like me as part of a partnership to handle it. They want somebody in the game, so that if they give $500,000 or $1 million or $2 million into a deal, then they know that whoever's going to handle it has some skin in the game.
Yeah.
And then when you start talking like that, then it attracts a very different client, a very different investor, very different mindset. People that perhaps would not have put their money in real estate, but then all of a sudden they're like, well, hang on a second. You're gonna develop this type of building, and I could buy through a limited partnership or a GP or whatever, and so on. And now all of a sudden it triggers a completely different conversation. So, and the funny part is that at first I'm like, I'm just going to start talking to people about that, existing clients. Some of the guys I know had bigger portfolios. I go to their house and we chat, but then it opens up the whole game. So as much as I at first was questioning, would people do that? Mm-hmm. It became very obvious that, oh yeah, people will do that with me. Attracting money all of a sudden is a non-issue. Now it's about finding the right deals and then selecting who we want to deal with, because obviously, it has to be through family, friends, and acquaintances, because we're it's not a registered investment portfolio. But it was very, very eye-opening for me that all of a sudden, when the language changed, then it's, whoa, then it's okay. All of this becomes possible. So in the area that we were in, the market is crazy. It's, people are buying stuff where I wouldn't, like, if for me, if I don't buy it, I will not encourage you to buy it, because if their cash flow is not there, I don't see a path to profitability, or I don't see something that warrants purchasing it. I'm an opportunistic buyer. So if something makes sense, even if it doesn't cash flow, I can see a path to making it cash flow with different things or so on, then I'll do that. But then, a lot of the real estate that we were facing was old, or, it was just selling for way more money than we felt was what made sense. So I started exploring development, but obviously development, and I know, more than I do, Patrice, it's a different ball game, right? It's a different ball game. It's, I'm used to taking it from a building that's already built and then taking on the operations, but get involved from the beginning of actually creating the project, going through that whole process, and actually bringing it to a level where we would take it before and move it on. It was, it didn't take too long for me to see, okay, yeah, it's a different game that we play, and explored different projects on my own. And I was always hit certain points. I'm like, you know what? I'm not sure I know enough of what I'm doing to go to the next level. And then last year, had approached a developer to perhaps take on some of my projects. And then all the advice that we were given, it just wasn't bad. It just wasn't good. It wasn't like, we'd go through that whole process and there's no way we're going to build this here. This is crazy. I mean, it just makes no sense. I wouldn't buy it. So why would I go through all the process of developing it? And then I fell onto a developer. We had a building that he had for sale. It was conditionally sold. And I said, I kind of want to go see the building. So I met the developer on site and went through it. And I'm like, wow, like, these are the types of buildings we want, because you don't want to be in the rental realm. You're trying to be in the mid-range usually. So you don't want to be in the low end stuff, because it tends to be a bit tougher market to serve. And if you're in the high end stuff, it's great when everything's going great. But if it's not, when it's not, it's a tougher market, because you'll get exposed to more vacancy. So all of a sudden I met this developer that had product like I would love to have. And so the conversation started off with him on him developing the projects, basically taking his portfolio, his projects, and just building it on our land. And it was funny, because one day he just pitched out to me, says, we should partner up on this. He says, I've never partnered up with anybody, but he says, I think you and I should partner up on this. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that, And then, but then at some point I hit a point where I'm like, you know what? I'll use the same mindset that my doctor client suggested. If he has skin in the game, then he has a vested interest, like me, to make sure that this project is successful. So funny how you hear that, and all of a sudden it comes and serves you in different ways, right? And now we've got 6 buildings on the go. They haven't started yet. Some are they're at different stages, but we have 6 on the go. A lot of demand for people to do that with. We're just being cautious now on who we want to deal with as well, because it's not a matter of like, it was never an idea where I'll bring 50 people at 50 grand, because it's it's just too much people. It's too many people to manage. So we're being very selective on who we'll bring into the deals, but there's opportunities that are coming along to have these purpose-built rental properties with an existing team that does the lease ups, the management, the ongoing operations, all the accounting, all that good stuff. So you'd come in and you'd own shares or part of a percentage of a project. And that's where the Dore Capital Group came in. So it came in to open up, to start having those conversations with potential people that would want to go down this route. And that's where I'm going. So for me, the management company that I built for like 15 years, I wanted to continue the third-party management, the fee for service. That's going to continue, obviously. And I've gotten some really, really awesome people to come in and replace Dan in the operation. And I'm really happy to say that they're better than I am. So
there's lots of some amazing owners and bosses. I think it was Jeff Bezos. Oh my goodness, I'm messing that up. That's terrible. But he used to say,
"Who's Jeff Bezos?"
Is it?
No, I'm kidding. No, I said, "Who's Jeff Bezos?" No, I'm kidding.
Okay, because I'm terrible. I'm probably getting the wrong person, which is terrible. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Anyways, and this is terrible. I hate this. Who is Apple?
Oh yeah, Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs. Oh my goodness, that's terrible. But you see, we're an influential, and then to me, there's similar values and similar, so that's where it comes up. Jeff, I think, is what, Amazon?
Amazon, yeah.
Oh, thank goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
Brain is on the right path.
That's okay.
Steve Jobs used to say, if I'm the smartest person in the room, then we're in trouble. He goes, but what he does is he hires those persons who's smarter than him, because that's what his skill was, finding the right team. Yeah. And that's it. So it was a remarkable statement. But oh my goodness, I don't know if my viewers will let me live this down. But and this is what happens.
But I laugh because usually I'm the one that doesn't remember names, so I'm happy. This time it didn't happen to me.
Oh my goodness, that's a bad one. That's a bad one. But I love the story, and I love, again, to really understand it and how that's a natural evolution. Personally, I feel it is because from a property management perspective, you actually understand on all the different aspects, except maybe building it from scratch, if that makes any sense. But you know what people are looking for, you know what investors are looking for, property investors, etc. So it's such a beautiful, to me, it's such a natural progression. Yeah. And I think I'm so excited for you, because yes, it's that next step. And you're right. You hit it on the asking the right questions, doing the due diligence, meeting the people. You mentioned that with the first session. It's so important to sit in that space and observe and listen and ask about, the other experiences that person has had, or speak to other people who've had experiences with them. And it is an investment. It is an investment, not just of the money. The money is something that maybe you can, earn back if you lost it for whatever reason. But it is part of that trust and investment in all of it. So I love it. But I want to ask 2 more questions. Sure. The first one was, so through that experience in the last year, aside from the COVID, because we know the pandemic has really put it slowed down everything for many people. But what has been one of, say,
That's a nice way of saying it. I don't know about you, but sometimes it didn't slow down. It shut down completely.
It shut everything down. Yeah. And what would you say is your biggest, has been the biggest either challenge or surprise going through this process?
Yeah, I think I don't shy away from asking questions. Like I mean, I always ask questions of people, and I always, aim to surround myself with people who know a lot more than I do. So I can't say that I had any, because it's riddled with challenges. Obviously, it's just crazy. I mean, we had the city comments on one of the projects, and I just had to laugh because it's just funny how a lot of the stuff comes in. It's completely irrelevant, but I expected that. I knew that was going to happen. So it wasn't a surprise. I'd say the biggest surprise that I've maybe naively didn't think was the amount of people that want to join us. Like, it's just like, I think I was a bit naive to that. Like, I mean, that part of it, I kind of got surprised because I realized I start talking, all of a sudden it's like, okay, we have no issues finding money. We have no issues. We have no issues. Now it's about finding projects. And the problem we run into now, the challenge that we run into is because of the pandemic. Some of the costs are completely off the deep end, and you just don't know. Last week I was with a developer, and we were talking about lumber pricing and how it's just skyrocketed. And I said to him, I said, listen, I said, do you see it coming back down? Or is this the new normal? He says it has to come back down, because he says it's just, they're taking advantage of the situation. They're just holding it back so people can pay, because the real estate, it'll recalibrate. I'm talking about the resale market. It will recalibrate somewhat, simply because once the inventory goes up, then obviously people won't have to overspend. So it'll probably recalibrate. But the costing, his opinion, I don't know. Like, I just came in thinking, is this the new normal? I mean, the cost of lumber is 40% higher than it was, a mere year ago. And his thought is there's just no way it can stay at this range, because there's no reason behind it. There's no supply shortages. There's no issues. So it's interesting, but I think that we're not done by, being challenged with different things that are coming along with these projects. It's just, but I knew this was a long game for us. So for me, it's like, yeah, okay, well, what's next? Like, we just got to keep plugging along, and you're not immune to it, but you kind of expect it, and you just, okay, so how do we address it? What do we fix? What needs to happen? And those are all questions that I'm sure you're very familiar with.
Well, it's interesting because I was saying to somebody just recently too, there is no such thing as a right time. There is making as you said, solution-based, right? It's finding, okay, well, what can we do? What is within our control? And let's work with that. What are we working with, and can we use it? In many moments like these, it's the resourcefulness, it's the innovation, it's a creative process that actually allows people to move forward. So if we were to keep going, oh gosh, it's too much. Guess what? 6 months later, it might be even more. And even if it did drop down, now we might have a shortage, because everybody's buying it up, and maybe they're overstocking because they're terrified that it will go up again. Like, there's so many of so yeah. I love the, okay, so this is what we're dealing with, where's the solution, and to find that. So I love it Okay, yeah. And to wrap it all up,
yeah,
what else are you working on, and as you move forward?
What else am I working on? I'm actively working on larger projects with more people, but the right projects. So we're having some high-level conversations with key people and it was funny because the other day, we were in a meeting to take over lease up of a 100+ unit building, and I'm just a guy, I come in and we're just chatting, and I said and we're finishing off, and I said I'll come back with a proposal, and I said to him, I said, you know what? I said, before I leave, I have to disclose, why, the motivation, like there's what's my agenda, right? I said, I'm not just here to manage your properties. So the guys looked at me, because he has two investors, like, because they brought me in to quote to manage and lease up. And I said, so full disclosure, I said, I'm doing this because I want to join your group. I'm going to be part of your next projects. And I said, just full disclosure, that's why really we're going to manage it. Obviously, that's what we do. But I'm going to be part of the next ones with you. So I just wanted to let you know.
Nice.
And they were like, what? Who is this guy? Talk about planting seeds, eh?
Yeah, big time.
You know, and it's always like, you know, if you're a bit afraid of doing it, then it means you should do it. So I'm like, how can I leave here a bit more afraid? That'd be one way.
I love it. I love it. And it's like, how do you go beyond, right? Like stretch yourself. I want you, before we close off, please touch upon the philanthropy, because that really spoke to me as well when we first met. Because this is, again, the bigger picture in all of it. Yes, we're a property management company. Yes, we're, building wealth and looking at development, etc. And some people can reflect on this and go, oh man, there they go again. They're making it and where is it for everyone else? But I worry when people look at life so much like that, because to me it's such gray. Why not build what people are looking for? Why not provide an opportunity for individuals who want to grow certain things? Because there's an opportunity. I always say it's an overflow, right? And what happens with overflow? Where can it go? And I understand that that's part of what you're also building. So tell me more about that part of your mission.
Yeah, it started a long time ago, where probably when I started exploring buying real estate and building my business, and I'm a fairly persistent, like focused, driven person naturally. And you always read these business books about ideas and mindset and beliefs and so on. And then this one day I remember reading I forget which book. I should really figure out which book it was, because it's a long time ago. And a chapter in the book was on tithing. And I say it now today, but I didn't know how to pronounce it. I didn't know what it meant. So unbeknownst to me, I start reading about essentially, as a macro, it's giving back, and how the wealthiest people make giving back part of their strategy. And it was interesting because that was foreign to me. It's foreign to me in a sense that it wasn't in my sphere of what I saw. We all say we always look at the same thing, we'll describe it differently. But that, I didn't understand, or essentially what that all meant. But then you start thinking that, wow, imagine if building your wealth, you're not only looking after yourself and your needs and your wants, but you're serving either the most vulnerable, or a cause or something, and people benefit indirectly, directly, obviously, I should say, from all of the decisions you make and all the business you build and all that. So it's interesting. So I had this idea of how do I do that, and who would I give to, and how would I, how do I want to do that? And I decided, when I was going to start giving, I decided I was going to give to what we call the CHIO Hospital. It's a Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario in the Ottawa area. And why the Children's Hospital? Because kids are most vulnerable. They're just born, and then all of a sudden, some have challenges and issues, and I didn't have kids at the time when I did that. It was just to me, in all the causes, I said, that's the cause that resonated the most with me, and it could be very different for different people. But to me, that's where it made the most sense. And it's interesting, I started donating, and this is, I don't go down this path too often, but I started donating at one point where it was interesting, because I'd started my business. So my job was no longer, and I started my business, and I'd actually replaced my income. I'd replaced my income, and I had a bit of real estate, and I'm like, wow, this momentum's really going well. And I promised myself that when I hit that point, I would buy myself a Porsche 911. I was going to buy my Porsche 911. And I forget how old I was when I hit that point. But anyway, so I hit that point, and then one day I was just going through it, and I'm like, what would be the carrying cost on a Porsche? Right? So I started looking at it, and I'm like, you know what? I'll take this money and I'll start donating every month. I'll use that. I can buy a Porsche later. And it just started like that. It was interesting. I literally just got on a computer, went on Chio Foundation, put in my credit card, say monthly donations. And the foundation called me the next day, and they said, oh, thank you. But you clicked reoccurring. Are you sure this is not a one-time donation? And I'm like, no, it's a reoccurring donation. And I'm like, really? Yes. So that's how it kind of started, and we left like that. And then my wife and I had kids, and we had to use the hospital, so it was kind of like, wow, all of a sudden I'm the user, and that was not my intention at the beginning. I started giving before we even have kids, and it just hit a cycle where it just made more sense. And over the years, I've increased a bit, and it's a generous donation that we give. It's monthly, and I do it monthly because I find it's easy, because we never have to think about it.
Right.
It's like another expense line that you have to pay, and it's part of business. So we never have to think it, because if it's other things, if it's marketing, if it's other thing, it's easy to rejig. And this, it's like, we're not touching this. Mm-hmm. And then last year, what ended up happening, and this is where, so last year, kind of telling people a bit about those, because I kept that on the wraps for some, they wanted to put a plaque at the hospital and this, that. And I'm like, I don't want anybody to know I'm doing this. And so they respected my privacy, but, they say, you should tell people. And even my dad and my parents would say, it's a nice thing you're doing. You shouldn't hide it. Right. And so we started telling people a bit about it last year. And then the hospital called, because obviously they got hit with the pandemic, and a lot of people pulled out their donations, and they're trying to be creative and figure out, like, how do we get more people back into donating mode, seeing the pandemic. And they reached out to me in the fall last year, and they pitched an idea to me, saying, you've been a long time donor, and we notice you've opened up a bit, and would you be open to offering maybe for 2021 a donation matching, meaning that everybody that donates monthly, you'll match dollar for dollar. So up to 50 grand. So when we're gonna blow past it, because just the first month of doing that, it's been very fruitful. And so next, this year, obviously our contribution will be 50 grand. Others will be 50 grand, so be 100 grand. Plus, I think the governments, provincial and federal governments, I think, pitch in. So it's going to be a good push for the foundation. Because just the right thing, right? It's just the right thing. And one of the things that I did, that I've heard at the beginning, before I started doing that, was, a lot of people say, well, when I have money, I'll start giving. And then people say, yeah, but it's easy for him, and, but yeah, if you don't start giving when you barely have any, most will never give. Right. So it's just reality. And so it was a personal thing, and I speak about it a bit more openly now if I'm asked, but but like this week, we have a donor that saw what we were doing. We know him, he knows me very well. And he reached out this week, and he says, you know what, I'm going to give 10 grand. I'm like, what? I'm like, wow. So we're going to be doing a photo op on Wednesday, because the hospital wants to be there for the donation. It's just like, so I'm like, wow. And I'm like, I'm so thankful that you're doing that. Like, I wasn't expecting that. And he says, yeah, but you started it.
Yeah. Right back
like,
at you, right?
I'm like, wow, that's so interesting. So I actually have goosebumps thinking about that because it's it was it's weird how sometimes you have that you're just choosing not to do it because it's not comfortable. You don't want people to know. You don't want to be, you know what I mean? And so
I love it. I love it. That was beautiful. That was truly beautiful. And I just want to point out again that you started when you were not fully, you were just starting out as a business owner, which is a very, very scary time because you still don't know, is this something that's going to continue? And you made a conscious choice. And I love that you brought up that it was something that resonated, is something you read. So the importance of books, people. It's also the importance of sharing that message because it now gives permission to others to do the same. And I totally get what you mean about, well, they say that if you do that and you start flaunting it, then what was your real strategy? And I think that's that fear of that judgment that we do. We think, oh boy, now they're going to think they're going to take it the wrong way, or they're. But when you're doing it from such a pure place, it does naturally evolve and change. And I want to stress that again, because even owners that I've had and helped in the past, property owners, business owners, etc., it's quite remarkable. Most people will start out with, well, why do you want to do this? Why do you want to invest? Why do you want to be your own boss, etc.? And many of them will say something like, I want to give back.
Yes.
Or I want to do something for others. And wow. It's a remarkable thing. And yes, they grow. And for many of them, especially those that stay true to that initial route, oh my goodness, do they ever make a difference? They really make a difference. It gets lost maybe in the bigger buildings, etc., but the core remains. And that's what.
I'm so happy you said that, because that's been my experience as well. Where if you're, and I'm not hiding behind the fact, when I started my business when I was younger, that was not on my radar, because I was not mature enough to know that, and but as you evolve and listen and absorb and take decisions, but I'm happy you're pointing that out, because that's definitely been, and I respect people who say, we'll go build this, we want to help, so that's, and essentially it's a bit of how the management company started as well, where we realized that we could help a lot of people own real estate just by being that, missing key link in that whole process for them. And that's the way it started, which is kind of interesting, trying to help people. Right. And so that it's a powerful word.
Help.
Yeah. Help and serve. And yeah,
100%. Well, Dan, that was incredible. A little longer, but I am glad. I'm happy for that. I am happy.
Sorry.
Dan, thank you so much for your time, for your sharing. Really, really enjoyed, especially that personal story. And to our listeners, if you liked what you heard, please press like at the bottom. If you want to be one of the first to find out our next podcast/video, please press subscribe. And I can't wait to share with you a next Global Property Connection. And please follow us on Facebook or visit our website at globalpropertyconnections.com to learn more about Dan and many of our other guests. Thank you so much. Have an awesome day.
Thank you.